While exploring an ancient, forgotten ruin, our players come across a room filled with strange, indecipherable runes. These runes, it turns out, match exactly to a set that was hidden earlier, further down the corridor. A hint from the people who built this place to set them on the right path. But why? Did this place's builders have such a terrible memory that they regularly needed reminding of their secret password? Did they install this puzzle to keep any creatures out that didn't have the ability to recognise and memorise patterns while letting anyone else in? If your security relies on the right people inputting the right code, why include helpful hints to help random people get to the solution? Surely that defeats the purpose of security. We've all seen examples of this. We've all experienced it. And many of us will have questioned it. But today I want to dive into why anyone would ever leave puzzles, riddles, and especially clues in their constructions to help random people at some point in the future who may be exploring it for some important quest out, and see what sort of world-building insights we can glean when we actually analyse this strange behaviour. Firstly, we'll examine the motivation behind making puzzles on their own at all. It's quite clear that any society that protects itself or its stuff through a puzzle room or puzzle door needs to keep out unintelligent beings or beings that haven't learned to think in the way that the puzzle requires. That can be anything from excluding those who just simply don't know a secret cipher, to those with a different language or different set of cultural assumptions. For example, let's assume a culture for whom standing water is a source of fear and terror. A culture who only consumes water either gathered directly from the sky or from condensation, for some ritual reason, perhaps related to an ancient curse or whatever. A group like this might design a culture test around this practice, where they have open containers of water on display in a room and instructions to prepare yourself for the journey to the ritual chambers by washing yourself and soaking yourself in water. The path to this sacred ritual chamber is covered in flames constantly, and so a sensible path forward is to soak oneself in water so you're less flammable. But if someone from outside of the culture, someone who doesn't have this superstitious ritual activity surrounding standing water, decides to use this water that's right there to soak themselves, they may be in for a bit of a shock, as that water has been specifically treated with small amounts of acid and glue and oil so that it sticks to and burns anyone who tries to use it. For a member of the in-group, the path is obvious. You wait for it to rain, or you condense some water some other way. Once given the clue, the solution is second nature. To anyone else, well, the obvious solution is wrong and bad, and the correct solution requires a great deal of cultural knowledge. Basically, a test or puzzle like this is a way to weed out those who don't share the fundamental qualities that are being tested. And sometimes a helpful hint or a riddle or a puzzle is only helpful when combined with the cultural context of the people who built it. Essentially, it's a form of cipher built out of cultural and ritual practices. For a well-used sacred space, following ritual actions to please a deity makes sense. And this sort of a trap, or puzzle, would make more sense if it were used by multiple groups of worshippers, not necessarily in constant communication with one another. A collectivized ritual act known to and demonstrated by the faithful and nobody else. This is a form of puzzle that makes some sense to exist, as it's only really even a puzzle if you don't have the cultural knowledge implicit to this particular mystery cult. But I would say that most puzzles in games are not as well integrated into the story of their location. The archetypal example of what I mean is found in Bleak Falls Barrow in Skyrim. This early game dungeon has an entire location story, quite a cool one. Bandits plumbing the depths of an ancient Nord burial ground, which itself contains a map of dragon burial sites down at its core, most likely there because this specific burial site was used by a cult who worshipped dragons. It's a cool and it's a dynamic location. We see living and dead entities all engaging with one another, some of them trying to figure out the secret method to raid this potentially treasure-filled tomb. And at the core of all of it is possibly the most idiotic puzzle I have ever seen. Every single challenge gate in this tomb is a simple spot the difference game. And the key to the final door, the last sanctum of these buried peoples, is the golden claw. It is a key shaped like a dragon's claw, and this really creatively designed key just so happens to have the entire combination for this final door engraved upon it. Ostensibly, according to an in-game journal, this golden claw with the answers on it is supposed to be a test to keep out the unworthy. And this makes so little sense that some people speculate that the Draugr, the undead tomb guardians, are not capable of reasoning out this claw puzzle, and therefore this door is to stay locked until a living person with an actual brain comes along. But that is all that the golden claw key selects for here, a living creature with a brain and possibly an eye. This is a barrow, a burial place, where effort has been made to ensure that some creatures are going to be protecting it in undeath for eternity. Not just that, is a barrow of the Nords who were members of an ancient mystery cult who had their own secrets. Why is the final test to enter into this place where they store their sacred information a basic test of visual comparison that could be aced by a 5-year-old? And why not use a form of two-factor authentication? Surely the mindless Draugr are not capable of using this oddly shaped key and turning it the right amount to open up a door anyway, regardless of the amount of puzzle matching you have to do. So if you want anyone in the future who is holding the key to be able to get in because they can read the solution off of the key itself and just replicate it, why bother with the final puzzle at all? And if you're actually looking for this tomb to only be opened by a specific kind of person who reflects your values, your belief and your knowledge, write the clues that you're going to give them in, like, the draconic language at least. Make them show some basic competence in reflecting your worldviews and what is important to you as a culture. This, I think, gets to the core of things, really. Puzzles or tests get used when one is looking to screen participants or entrants. So the only people who need a helpful hint, a clue, are going to be those who are unable to pass normally. But the sort of people who can't pass normally, but you think might still be worthy enough to have a helping hand on the way. I think all clues really should be keyed to that impetus instead. Instructions as well, they count as clues too. If your trial is intended to be beaten exactly once by every single teenager who comes of age in your culture, say, teenagers from disparate tribes and disparate locations, then instructions, the theming of the puzzle, and the clues that are given should be left in the form of symbols from a shared mythic tradition. Or they should demonstrate the tools, the abilities, and the learnings that are important to a culture in this transitional stage. Not some random riddle about fish, or another version of the Tower of Hanoi. But what about places that are supposed to stay sealed forever? Tombs of kings and pharaohs, the homes of the gods, vaults of dragons or liches' treasure. I think the best way, we can all agree on this, the best way to keep such things safe from everyone except the immortal owner or succession of custodians that you're choosing to use to protect this place, it's to make the test so obscure, so esoteric, trap-laced, and so actively misleading that no reasonable person, no person at all really, could get past this puzzle or trap without foreknowledge. Basically, make your puzzle entirely hostile, unintuitive, and for the answer to be something completely different to what is hinted at by the room. The only way you are going to be planning multi-generationally to communicate helpful hints, actually helpful hints and clues, not some horrible mislead, for future explorers of this place in a puzzle is if the entire facility is designed expressly and specifically in case of apocalypse. I will explain. Let's say you are a classic fantasy society that has dealt with some horror from an abyss. You've barely made it through this threat as a civilization before just about managing to seal this creature away for 1,000 years. But that's not long enough. Over time you develop a weapon, a method of actually beating this creature if it comes back. But you're not naive. You know your society might not make it that far, and if this thing comes to the world, it will destroy everything. So the obvious solution is to build a test designed to find those qualities that you value, such as altruism, heroism, kindness, and the willingness to self-sacrifice, and grant this ultimate power to the one who displays them all through your tests. In your absence, then, you're going to need some symbols, some helpful clues and hints. Ideally, ones that don't require any specific sort of cultural or linguistic knowledge to decipher. Think those warnings that we are trying to place that are going to be universally readable for millennia into the future on sites where we've buried nuclear waste, or messages that we send to alien life forms. You want to ensure intergenerational understanding without relying on language, linguistics, and while also looking for very specific qualities in those tests. So that's it then. Basically just the tests for the Holy Grail in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Right down to the worthiness of the bearer of the artifact. You're going to need some helpful, universally symbolic active clues, or some guide who can speak in whatever modern language is helpful, to act as a way to present a culturally neutral test for certain qualities and certain problem-solving capacity. This is all so that some future hypothetical person who is not you can use your resource to do some good. Think divine trial chambers, like the Gauntlet of Shar from Baldur's Gate 3. Although I would say specifically for that particular group of Shah worshippers, I would have definitely included a few more tests of theological orthodoxy before, letting a random person become a justiciar. So, we've now established that if you want something secured for you, lock it under a set of horrible antagonistic traps, or just bury it somewhere in the ground where it'll never be found and don't have any path leading to it at all. If you are using puzzles and traps, make them actively harmful and not useful and mean. If you're creating a trial chamber for your own people as a test of coming of age, then use clues, references and hints that reflect the idiosyncrasies and specific parts of your culture, your cultural practice and your ritual practice. And if you want to put the answer to your door puzzle, which has 27 different configurations, if you want to put that directly on the key that you use to unlock said door, well, you better prepare for your door to be opened by anyone who is slightly more intelligent than a mindless zombie. So, is the only way to sensibly and rationally include a puzzle with some helpful hints or some at least instructions along the way that are broadly understandable to most people, really just to build a facility that is explicitly intended to test people and give out rewards? I can think of a few other niche reasons why you might actually want to include a helpful hint in a puzzle in a dungeon, let's say. The first is silly, but it is undeniable. Helpful hints can be helpful not only to random people exploring the ruins, but also to the people who set up the puzzle. Liches, mad wizards and dragons tend to live quite a long time, and a puzzle whose solution you deviously designed hundreds of years ago might actually still stump you. The hints that are employed here might actually still be coded specifically to the individual's personal experience. Think the memorable word that you have at your bank. Part of the way in is to remember a specific life event, and that helpful hint helps jog your memory and no one else's. Also said clues to remind the dungeon's creator of what they're doing in this particular puzzle is likely to be hidden in some cipher or a personal code. But there's no way a lich isn't going to try and leave notes for himself in order to make sure he can safely navigate the most devious and dangerous traps he devised in his young life. Another reason there might be helpful hints in the environment is exactly that. Borrowing a tool from game design, environmental design, there might be clues to intended solutions, or hints towards previous attempts, failed or not, that naturally form as a dungeon or puzzle room gets used. Simple stuff like corpses on the floor, writing in blood from a previous victim of a trap, or slight discoloration and greasy residue on the top corner of the book that's pulled out as a secret door. Yes, it's more work than inventing a rhyme or putting some riddle from the internet in a room, but it also makes more sense to have some diegetic hints towards things that have been tried and things that might have been partially successful in the past than the creator of this place writing a helpful hint for someone to steal their stuff. This, I think, allows us to not only broaden our idea of what a hint can be, but also of what a puzzle can be. See, puzzles too can be told through environmental storytelling. They don't have to be built and constructed. They can be as simple as a big chasm. And a helpful hint in this case could be anything from a sturdy looking tree in the cliff above to remnants of a rope bridge that was once constructed here, or a broken remnant of a rope swing tied around some object up high. Having to figure out which of a series of buttons to press in what order based on a cryptic poem about the phases of the moon and the phases of a man's life, it doesn't seem to do anything but waste the time of people who are coming through here and act as kind of a basic sapience check, as we discussed with the golden claw key. Basically just to stop wild animals and people who are not capable of rational thought from getting in. This does relate, though, the wasting of time, to a thought that I have had in the past a few times. Given the sheer variety and abundance of dungeons present in your gaming fantasy worlds, these things in D&D worlds and in worlds of video games are replete with traps and puzzle rooms galore. What if the helpful hint was part of a general social contract of dungeoneering, specifically between the dungeon's creator and the person coming through? An enterprising and efficient adventuring party could easily bring a bag of explosives to set up and explode at any obstacle they found to get through quickly and with a lot of loud noise. So these kind of impossible, mean rooms that are designed to trick you over and over again, blow the whole thing up, blow the door open and move on. They could dismantle every door they come across this way, blow through the walls, break down walls and just keep moving, all the while probably alerting all the residents of this particular place to their presence here and allowing them to gear up for one massive ambush later. That doesn't sound desirable to anyone. The residents of a dungeon don't want to have their home blown up, and the adventurers would rather take many smaller fights with some potential element of surprise, with rests in between, and also probably wouldn't like to spend all their money on explosives, just to blow holes in walls. And they most certainly don't want a coordinated, prepared armed response. As such, beings with the wherewithal to observe these processes playing out over and over again might realise that their puzzles should actually be solvable. And they might choose to include helpful hints to keep adventuring parties engaged. In a world where dungeons are a common enough thing, this is a bit of a win-win. Adventurers are kept distracted and busy, while they're also disincentivized to just blow their way through doors and walls, because they can save their resources by just solving a variety of puzzles, which feel fairly doable. All the while, the defensive side is relaying information and probably scrying on their progress through the dungeon, picking an opportune time for an actual proper ambush. And when the heroes fail a test or get killed, there's less of a rebuilding cost. And this isn't just an option to be used in the kind of meat grinder dungeons that are often built by liches to power their own phylacteries in Dungeons and Dragons worlds. Any creature who lives in their own lair can benefit from some delay tactics and incentivizing adventurers to solve a few problems rather than, busting their way down through doors. I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you do, for whatever reason, want to justify an actual, honest-to-goodness puzzle room with a big old hint or riddle in it, you should lean on this likely implicit social contract of dungeon etiquette, where to some extent it becomes in both parties' interests to have the puzzles that invading adventurers come across be actually solvable, simply to slow them down and get you a bit of time to prepare, without the repeated and rampant destruction of your home. So there you go. Even in a video critical of the blatant hints given for purely game mechanic reasons to ease player frustration, I've still somehow managed to justify the very thing I was critical of in the start. At least to a certain extent. But I do hope that you've learned something, or can use what's been discussed today to just simply think more about the context behind a puzzle's existence, and which skills and hints make more diegetic sense than others to feature, depending on the purpose or the repurposing of this particular location. As always, please share your thoughts on puzzles in the comments below, and also what you've done to de-gamify your dungeons, or perhaps even up the ante on the gamification, which is also a very valid way if you're, doing a magical live streaming dungeon show thing, a la Dungeon Crawler Carl. But with all that said, I've been Tom, otherwise known as the thegrungeonmaster. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.